Good evening and welcome to our program. The Agency for Public Information is pleased to bring to you another informative package with the latest information on government's plans, programs, and policies. I am Shanna Daniel. Coming up on this presentation, Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves explains his government's thrust towards job creation. Minister of Agriculture the Honorable Soboto Caesar talks about some exciting initiatives geared at diversifying the agricultural sector. And local bakers complete regional training on how to use grated potato and cassava for baking. Stay right where you are. We will have the details just after Newswatch with Keisha Woodley.
Welcome to Newswatch. Good evening. I am Keisha Woodley. The Botanical Gardens, through the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority and the Special Olympics Committee, received checks from corporate citizens. The handing over ceremony took place at the Botanical Gardens on Monday. Chairman of the National Parks, Rivers and Beaches Authority, Mr. Gideon Nash, stated that the contribution should not only improve and develop the nursery in the botanical garden, but increase the production of ornamental plants.
I have intimate knowledge of the fact that St. Vincent the Grenadines imports in the millions in terms of ornamental plants into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Nature Care, of which I am the managing director, in 2009, we imported no less than three 40-foot containers of plants and 7 20-foot containers of plants. In total, we have imported then 10 container loads of plants, amounting to millions of dollars.
Chairman of the Special Olympics Committee, Mr. Errol Allen, expressed gratitude to the donors and hopes it will serve as a treadmill for persons in the corporate community.
We have not always had the support of the corporate community, except really for our two large donors, who are Bank of St. Vincent and Digicel. But we believe that this event this morning can serve to motivate other persons within the corporate community that we still are some distance away from the $180,000, but we are nearing it. And thanks very much for the effort of yourselves.
Other persons present at the handing over ceremony were Mr. Gordon Shallow, curator of the Botanical Gardens, Mr. Keith Boye, Mr. Lennox Bowman and staff of GECU, staff of the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, trustee of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Trust, Mrs. Louise Mitchell-Joseph, and staff of the Botanical Gardens. Now to agriculture. The Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, is collaborating with the Ministry of Agriculture to host a workshop on reducing post-harvest losses in sweet potato and dasheen. The conference takes place this week at the fisheries. One of the objectives of the workshop is to conduct an in-depth analysis of post-harvest handling practices to obtain a more complete understanding of the process. Chief Agricultural Officer Mr. Ashley Kane stated, "For us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this is a very important issue, which, if we can address properly, would lead to more profits at the farm level and more stronger and more vibrant agricultural communities."
So that at the end of the workshop, when we go back to the fields and we interact with our various clientele, that we would have a stronger foundation on which to build sustainable marketing systems and to build the marketing channels. And thirdly, from an objective standpoint, to examine links between growers and to provide for transference of relevant research information. There a few modern industries which do not rely on relevant research in order to drive and to sustain their business.
In health matters, the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment wishes to advise the general public that as part of its mosquito control program, officers within the Insect Vector Control Unit will conduct fogging operations on St. Vincent on the following days and places beginning at 4 p.m. Tomorrow at Richmond Hill, Maurice Village, Paul Over, and Rockies, and on Thursday at Redemption Shops, Kingston Park, and Level Gardens. Homeowners and owners of business enterprises in the named areas are required to keep their windows and doors open to allow the fog to take effect. Finally, on Newswatch, the Carnival Development Corporation, the CDC, is asking raga soca and soca artists who are interested in participating in this year's competition to note that registration forms are available at the CDC's office. Registration closes on Friday, June 19th. All registration forms must be accompanied by a copy of the song on a CD, which should be ready for airplay. Also, artists are required to pay a registration fee of $30 to the SVG CA Inc. Failure to do so would result in the non-judgment of the CD. This has brought us to the end of another Newswatch segment. Good evening. I am Keisha Woodley.
The following is a message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment.
I brought plums for break today.
Plums? Where's the salt?
At school we don't eat fruits with salt.
I don't think it is good. Look, some salt.
No, it's better without. Less salt, healthier life.
A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment.
Thank you for staying with us, and if you're just joining us, then welcome. This is the presentation from the Agency for Public Information. The 2001 Population Census Report says that 35,036 persons were employed across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, representing an increase of 1,529 persons compared to the 1991 figure. This represents an average of 139 persons per year over the 11-year period. Speaking from Cabinet Room during a press conference on June 2nd, Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves explained his government's thrust for job creation in the coming years.
First of all, let us understand where we are with the creation of jobs. Let us use the data from the census. This is the population census for the 2000 round. Ours was done in 2001. This is one for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 2001. And it is stated in this document in 2001 that the number of persons who are employed was 35,036. 35,036 persons. An increase of 1,529 persons, employed persons, compared to 1991. That's between 1991 to 2001. That's 11 years. In 11 years, when they tell me that the economy was doing so well, the actual flesh and blood people who are employed, who gained employment in that period, was 1,529. compared to 2001. Divide 1,529 by 11, you get 139 persons on average per year. I'm coming to something where the leader of the opposition in New York says, in 1 year he will do 500. Just in case you let me find the actual page. At page 61 and to page 62. There were 35,036 employed persons in the labor force in 2001. This represents an increase of 1,529 employed persons compared to 1991. This overall increase is the net result of 1,877 females who were added and 285 males that were removed. So you had less men working physically in 2001 than were working in 1991. It is not I who say so, Frank. I'm reading from the report. But of course, you still had more males working, even though in that period, you had more women coming into the labor force. Coming into the employed category. That's 1991 compared to 2001. So the average is 139 per year for those 11 years. In that period, Arnim Eustace, we are told, was the guru in the Mitchell government, advising as fiscal advisor, and he was the Minister of Finance in 2.5 years. Now I go now to 2012. The number moved to 40,821 between 2001 and 2012. They had an adjustment on the 2001 figure, because remember I said 35,036. When they did the adjustment, looking at the data again, they carried it to 35,588, but 35,000 plus. And for 2012, 40,821. I'll find the actual. Quote on page 82 of this. This is the one which they're still editing as I gave the answer, but this is what was written up. It's in the hands of the Director of Planning. She's doing the editing to see everything is in order. Hopefully we can publish it within the next month, 2 months, whatever time they give me, I'll have it published. It says here, this outturn, that is to say of 40,821 employed persons, which is roughly 15% more actual flesh and blood people being employed in 2012 than were employed in 2001. Says this outturn was on account of 3,884 males and 2,416 females, 3,884 females and 2,416 males who gained employment during the intercensal period 2001 and 2012. You add those, you get 6,300. If you divide 6,300 by 12, 2001 to 2012, you get 525 persons per year on an average. So, Arnim Eustace wants to employ as his goal roughly the same number that we are already employing a year on an average. But you remember that I have told you that though, I've said so in the budget debate, that though we have the actual unemployment rate in 2001 and 2012 is roughly the same, though between 1991 and 2001, 1.5% more persons were unemployed than in 2001 than in 1991. No. I want everybody to appreciate this. And this is the fundamental point. I give the statistics, but statistics by themselves don't illustrate the fundamental point. And the fundamental point is this. In 1991, almost 1/5 of the labor force was unemployed. In 2001, almost 1/5 of the labor force was unemployed. In 2012, almost 1/5. Even though the actual numbers in between 2001 and 2012 increased by over 6,000, is because of the increase in the population, but more importantly, the alterations internally in the population, where more persons over 60 years of age are in the labor force and employed. Because under the ILO rules, up to when you're 65, you're counted as being part of the labor force. Are you with me? I'm hoping those who are listening to me are following me carefully. What is the lesson from these numbers? The lesson is this, that St. Vincent and the Grenadines historically has a low absorptive capacity for labor. That's the conclusion I want to draw from the whole time series data. And that is why I say to the people of this country, you cannot cross this developmental chasm in baby steps. If you seek to cross the chasm in baby steps, CHASM, you will fall in the widening gorge, below in the widening gorge. Have you ever seen anybody cross a gorge, a wide gorge in baby steps? You have to take jumps. And we have to break the bottlenecks to get the development, which is what this government has been doing, while at the same time having targeted strategic initiatives on an ongoing basis to hold people together in jobs and so forth and support system to go forward. What are the important strategic issues for the medium to longer term? Education. The education revolution was underway from 2001, but it is in real terms, it accelerated from 2005, when we had universal access to secondary education. You're not going to see the benefits of that education revolution until the medium and the longer term. You're beginning to see it. But somebody who went to university, who went to secondary school in 2005, when you had open access to complete access, what you then have, assuming that they spend 7 years in the primary school, 5 years in secondary school, 2 years at community college, that's 14 years, and they went in when they were 5. That means they're 19 years. That means the students who are now coming out of the community college this year are the ones who went in the first batch of universal secondary education. Then they have another 3 years to get their degree. Of course, we have been accelerating the numbers between 2001 and 2005. But the full education revolution, the liftoff occurred in 2005. Though, as I say, we were ramping up all the time. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to see the changes already which will begin to take place and what is ahead of us. You take nurses. 20 nurses and less they used to have every year. We began by 100 and paying nurses to go to school and giving them a free education. The only place in the Caribbean. We now have a surplus. We're taking now 70 rather than 100. We send to Barbados. We send a batch already to Trinidad. There's another batch to go to Trinidad. They want our nurses. Of course, our nurses also go to North America. I have no problem with that, so long as I have enough to man our system. And right now, I have nearly 800 nurses and nursing assistants in St. Vincent and the Grenadines working within the health sector. Not a bad number for a population for 109. Hebrea? Let's talk the facts. I'm not interested in scurrility, you know. So we have to educate people. That is what is helping you to cross the widening gorge, the chasm. You have to build a jet airport at Canawan. That's why more investments are pouring in there. That's why we have to build the Argyle International Airport and complete it. That's why we have to connect North Windward and the rest of the country. Do you know that the census data show that there are more people employed in the Sandy Bay Census District than in 2012 than in 2001? Census data show that. So we have to do education. We have to do the infrastructure, including the airports. Energy is expensive. But why is it took so long for them to even begin to address this question when they're in government? It is this government and this Prime Minister. I took the portfolio of energy precisely because energy is so important. I take it, they say that Ralph won't run everything. That's why I'm the Minister of National Disasters and Disaster Preparedness. If I'm not in charge of those things, when a disaster strikes, you want to hear anybody else to come and talk to the nation, or you want to hear the Prime Minister? So I take charge of it from first. Energy is vital. And in 2018, at the end of it, we'll have 80% of the energy being generated from renewable sources, stable sources. You read Annie Musa's speech as Minister of Finance in 2000, the last budget speech he delivered. He spoke about renewable energy generally. But he spoke about wind energy in particular. Geothermal was not there, solar was not there. And he said they were looking at wind in the Grenadines. Your most beautiful tourism islands. You want to uglify them by putting up a whole set of windmill? It's there, you know. You wouldn't find the word uglify inside of the dictionary, but I'm giving you what is the meat. I'm giving you what it is. I'm being dramatic. Uglify you. This is a man who will uglify the Grenadines when I'm seeking to beautify them. Eh? Now, no study was done, nothing. It's just, you want to say there's renewable. But you must feel breeze coming in the Grenadines now. So wind, good, plenty wind, breeze. Listen, this is a serious job for serious people. This is a serious job for serious people. Now, what we have been doing, the data from the NIS, from the census, is supported also by the data from the NIS. Not in the precise numbers. For the census, it will be June in a particular year. June 2001, June 2012. But in the NIS, we have to use end-of-year figures. So we use the end-of-year figure in 2000 because they were there only for 3 months. At the end of the year, the active insured population, this is the working population, the active at the end of 2000, was 29,985 persons. Up to 2008, our numbers rose to 37,795, an increase by nearly 8,000, 7,810. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 years. Divide 7,810 by 8 years. That's 900 and something on an average per year. And remember, not everybody on the NIS, I'm not disputing census numbers, but they give us what they give us from their methodology and everything. Now, after the economic crash in 2008, by 2012, we lost about 2,000 persons on the NIS register, working people. But we still had 5,044 over the 2,000 number, which approximates to the 6,000 which the census found, because the NIS, there are people who are working who are not on the NIS. See the point I'm making, Frank, how the numbers approximate? Now, self-employed people. At the end of 2000, there were 277 self-employed people at the NIS. By 2008, there were 1,125 self-employed people. People finding opportunities to do their little businesses and so on and so forth. By 2012, the number had fallen to 943. But 943 in 2012 compared to 277 when Eustace handed it to me. Huh? What is he talking about? Employers. The active employers at the end of 2000 was 1,725. By 2008, it was 2,225, an increase of 285. But since then, between then and 2012, the number came down to 2010. Still, an increase of 285 employers, active employers, over the year when Eustace handed it for me. Therefore, when he reads out businesses which fail, he must also talk about businesses which came on. That's the point I want to make.
That was Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves speaking from Cabinet Room, where he held a news conference on June 2nd. We'll take a break now, but we'll be back in just a moment to hear from Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Saboto Caesar, about several initiatives geared at diversifying the agricultural sector. And later, local entrepreneurs complete training in the production of bakery products using grated cassava and sweet potato. We will be back in just a moment.
The Economic Partnership Agreement signed between 27 European Union member states and 15 CARIFORUM member states in October 2008 is a trade partnership for increased competitiveness, economic growth and development, and supports regional integration in the Caribbean and participation in the world trading system. For more information on the EPA, please contact the EPA Implementation Unit within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade and Consumer Affairs at telephone number 485-6260. You can also email us at svgepeaiu@gov.vc and also follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Welcome back to the presentation from the Agency for Public Information, the API. October 30th, 2015 marks the 5th year since Hurricane Thomas affected this country, and the Ministry of Agriculture has been actively involved in the rebuilding of the local agricultural sector. There is now a general thrust to diversify the sector, and to this end, a diversification unit will be established within the ministry to carry out this function. Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Saboto Caesar, who was speaking on his return to St. Vincent and the Grenadines after attending the OECS Economic Council meeting in St. Lucia, said that the local ministry will collaborate with the Ministry of Agriculture in Grenada to develop various aspects of the agricultural sector following the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the two countries.
One of the very important issues discussed at the meeting pertained to the movement of goods and people as it pertains to maritime transportation. Maritime transportation is going to play a very critical role in the development of the agricultural sector here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in the OECS. It is a fact that the food import bill of the OECS, and the data was provided by the FAO, it was calculated at $500 million US. And it is very important that we pay very close attention to this large sum of monies, and also to note that there is significant potential for growth in the agricultural sector of the OECS, and I may define it as also in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if we are able to carve out for farmers and for producers a greater share of the national food consumption bill. Several islands in the Caribbean, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a leader in this regard. We are currently working on increasing our exports and reducing our imports, and to ensure that in the future a large percentage of this $500 million US, the OECS's food import bill, that we can produce a lot of these food locally. But what is very important is that producing is one thing. Moving the food from the source of production to the market is a very important issue. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines is excellently placed to increase the production of several of these commodities and to utilize current vessels that we have existing. And we did a survey, and we have some 10 vessels available currently. And these vessels are in need of some retrofitting to be able to carry containerized cargo. When this is completed, it is envisaged that St. Vincent and the Grenadines can become the maritime hub for the transportation of agricultural commodities throughout the OECS. The reality is this: we have a significant capacity to increase our production of agricultural commodities here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for export to the region. We are working currently with the FAO of the United Nations, and we have already detailed the commodities which are comprised within the $500 million imports. The next step is the retrofitting of the vessels, meeting with the vessel owners and the agents, and then to have farmers streamlined so that we can have farmers focusing on several key commodities for export. This definitely is a step in the right direction, and in the next 2 weeks we'll be meeting with the vessel owners, who will be asked to produce a listing, and on this listing they would have to produce a costing as to how much assistance will be needed for the retrofitting of the vessels. This document will be produced and funding would have to be sought. There is a possibility that a credit facility could be made available, and the credit could be made available to the boat owners for the retrofitting. This week, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is going to export one 40-foot container of plantains pursuant to the Windfresh initiative, where earlier this year we would have signed an MOU with Windfresh for the exportation of 6 40-foot containers of produce on a weekly basis. I remember when we signed the MOU, there were some persons who were saying we won't ever see a container leaving. Well, this week we are seeing the first 40-foot container leaving St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the United Kingdom. Norman Pemberton and Reuben Jackson are the two individuals working with the Farmers Support Company to ensure that we get all the logistics right. We are looking about between 900 to 1,000 boxes of plantains. I am really advising and encouraging the farmers who are going to sell the plantains to the Farmers Support Company to ensure that we grade these plantains properly, because we are now having a very important leg into a door, and we have to ensure that we send the best quality that we have. I spoke to the CEO of Windfresh, and he noted to me that he intends to purchase for the next 6 weeks one 40-foot container of plantains from St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And he said that he is only doing this because he is not of the view that we have more, but once we have more, he will be able to increase the volumes that he can purchase from 1 container to 2 containers. We have made some progress in terms of the other commodities that we wish to export, the butternut squash, the sweet potatoes, and we will be exporting samples of these to other islands in the region before the end of July this year. We have been able to reduce our imports as it pertains to butternut squash because we are producing significant quantities locally. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Ministry of Agriculture would have signed a memorandum of understanding with the government and people of Grenada. And this document I will make available to the press. It contains and touches on concerns cocoa, nutmegs and spices, bananas, root crops and cattle. We continue to export cattle to Grenada, and there is going to be another shipment in the month of August where we are going to export some 150 heads of cattle to Grenada. It's now well known in Grenada that they are dependent on St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the purchasing of cattle. It is in the MOU that we are going to ensure that this trade continues and that wherever there are problems, the mechanism is in place for us to solve those problems. Taking that into consideration, we are working with the government and people of Cuba and also of Jamaica to ensure that our artificial insemination program is a success. And we already have a cadre of farmers that we are working with to ensure that we can have the artificial insemination science basically utilized in this country to ensure that we do not reduce the national herd to levels which would affect our production and productivity. We are placing a lot of emphasis in the Ministry of Agriculture on diversification. And as we prepare for the next budget, we are ensuring that within the administrative framework of the ministry that this is going to be highlighted, a diversification unit. We are working on ensuring that we diversify with bananas. We know of the problems that we have been encountering in the banana industry as it pertains to the black sigatoka disease, which is under control in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we should be exporting bananas from St. Vincent and the Grenadines in a matter of just a few months, because the only barrier now to the exportation is the certification process that has to be completed between fair trade and Windfresh, and this is being worked on in a very steadfast and efficacious manner. We are going to pursue into the MOU with Grenada, be receiving assistance in nutmeg and cocoa technology from the stage of production right up to harvesting and also processing. We will be assisting the Ministry of Agriculture in Grenada with banana plantlets, and they will be assisting us with different varieties of nutmegs and cocoa and other spices. We intend for this to really bear a lot of fruits for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and also the people of Grenada. And it is all in the interest of the growth and development and partnership that we expect and we envisage to come out of the revised Treaty of Basseterre, where we expect to see islands within the OECS working closer for the development and advancement of each member state.
Thank you very much. That was Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Saboto Caesar. You're viewing a presentation from the Agency for Public Information. We will be back with our final segment, where we will tell you of several local entrepreneurs who recently completed a regional training program in using grated cassava and potato for baking. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
The following is a message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment.
Oh, new snacks on the market. I sure my children love this.
Really? New snacks? Very eye-catching. Look at the amount of sodium or salt in this. I would buy this for my child.
Oh, really? And I bought this too. I never know they pack with so much sodium.
Choose snacks that are less than 140 milligrams of sodium per serving.
Less salt, healthier life.
A message from the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment.
Welcome to the final segment of the presentation from the Agency for Public Information. On May 27th, a closing ceremony was held at the NIS conference room to mark the end of training for local bakers in the production of composite bread and bakery products comprising wheat, flour, and other staples. The training is part of a regional initiative which is held in collaboration with the local Ministry of Agriculture. The API's Cherise John has more details in the following report.
In an effort to encourage greater consumption of locally derived staples and decrease the overall food import bill across the region, the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, CARDI, in collaboration with the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, and the Caribbean Agribusiness Association, CABA, conducted a series of training sessions for entrepreneurs in production and development of value-added products. A group of local bakers were given an opportunity to participate in training in the production of composite bread and bakery products comprising wheat flour and locally produced staples such as cassava and sweet potato. The program, which is a part of the Intra-ACP Agricultural Policy Program project implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture, Rural Transformation, Forestry, Fisheries and Industry, CARDI, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, IICA, and CARICOM, seeks to create a paradigm shift in consumer preference for highly refined simple carbohydrates through the introduction of locally produced alternatives, which are just as good or even better than those imported. Speaking at the program's closing ceremony, FAO consultant Raymond Extravo noted that with the decline of traditional agricultural pillars such as banana and sugar in the region, her organization now seeks to stimulate economic growth through developing new strategies in the agricultural sector.
Over the last 10 years, probably 15, you would have noticed our traditional agricultural pillars have fallen down. We relied on banana and sugar, and the impact of that has significantly impacted on the economic status of the entire Caribbean and a lot of it in the OECS countries, actually. As a result, we had to look for new ways to stimulate and drive development in the agricultural sector. One of the ideas we've done for that is by collaborating with our partners to find those ideas. CABA has developed a number of products from their work in Trinidad and Tobago, which one of them is integrating cassava and root crops, not just cassava, sweet potato, plantain, into bread. We are therefore, in supporting the work that CARDI, CARICOM, IICA, and CABA is doing, have sought to put a program together to promote processing and market development of cassava, and by extension, consider the other root crops. To take a look and bring it home to St. Vincent, in 2011, St. Vincent had an average import of wheat, which includes flour and wheat, of 13.5% of your total agricultural imports. And that equated to something approximately $9 million US in imports. Those are the kinds of figures we start looking at. So that we take from a policy perspective, what are we actually doing and how do we set some targets to help reduce that import bill by replacing some of what you consume with wheat flour with local produce. Some of our analysis, just to share with you, is if we were to consider replacing even approximately 10% of what you import, that would have a requirement for us to plan and sit with our partners to plan how do we plan to replace that import bill by increasing both sweet potato and cassava production in St. Vincent. I mean, and as I've been reminded since I've been here, I mean, St. Vincent is the root crop champion of the region. So why not start here? And I am looking forward, though, that the region takes off and we find an opportunity to support our local farmers, support what we produce. You, the bakers here, have an opportunity to add value and to stimulate that growth in your local economy.
CABA consultant for the Healthy Carbs program and bakery investment opportunity, Rex Collymore, said that the program seeks to create potential business opportunities for local entrepreneurs and farmers, and he hopes that this initiative will encourage the region to understand the true value of locally produced commodities.
our association, Caribbean Agribusiness Association, we are very pleased to be working with all of the various agencies, ICA, FAO, CADI. We have been embraced by the Ministry of Agriculture across the region. We have been embraced by these organizations to really work with them. We have been working the Caribbean Healthy Carbs program for a while. We have proven the success of it in Trinidad through the use of cassava bread, sweet potato bread, plantain bread. And not only that, we see the value of it, the way we can now take our root crops and create other products, frozen for export. So there's a great deal of potential for would-be business individuals and even business individuals who are here, and even the farmers and all of the processors to really move forward with Caribbean staples. There's so much in the Caribbean that we have that we can go forward with. We spend a lot of time looking at what the foreigners are bringing in, white potato, rice, you know, a whole range of different products. And we have staples that carried us forward for years. Coconut has a lot of potential. But somebody came along and said, you know, don't use coconut oil, it's not good for you. You know? And so we listened to these multinational corporations, and they came in here and they ruled out the use of our coconut. But today, if you go to purchase one bottle of coconut oil in Trinidad, what you call a rum bottle of coconut oil, you'll pay $150 to $200 for one bottle of coconut oil. And may I say this, do you know something? People, and because they now realize the value, they're buying it. There's a high demand for it. People are looking to import from Guyana and different places because of the need for coconut oil. So people make the statement, you know, I mean, if we do the composite bread, it will be more expensive, you know, because, I mean, wheat flour is cheap. Now think about it. If people today are willing to pay $200 for a bottle of coconut oil because they now understand the value, we can do the very same thing in marketing the other factors, the other products that will involve cassava, sweet potato, dashin, eddos. What we need to do is just sensitize our people of understanding the need to value what they have been given, the resources that God has given them to benefit them. Everything that you need to benefit your country is right here. How many of us take the time to value, to consider it, to make use of it, to promote it? Not everything that's foreign is good. May I say this? Consider what you have in your backyard, in the farms. Consider it as the means of carrying forth your country.
Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Sabota Caesar, says that this program presents a good opportunity for economic growth and development in the agriculture and agro-processing sectors, but it will only succeed if all stakeholders are on board to promote the initiative.
We have significant opportunities for growth and development in this country. Significant opportunities. But sometimes we are not looking in the right direction. And I want to encourage us that if we are to grow and advance ourselves as a people, we have to ensure that we have the requisite enabling environment to harness these opportunities and possibilities as they arise. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are the largest exporter of root crops in the OECS. We are also the largest exporter of cattle in the OECS. We produce the most expensive starch in the entire world. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, our root starch is retailed at $50 per pound. We have extremely fertile soils, and we have an increasingly trained labor force. We have and we are blessed with our close proximity to Trinidad and Tobago. And 3 years ago, I was advised by NAMDEFCO that 98% of the root crops imported into Trinidad and Tobago originate right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In fact, when I was a student in Trinidad and Tobago, I will walk into Ituna Puna market. They don't know I am a Vincentian, but they would tell me the price for the potatoes from country X is this. Those are the Vinci. The Vinci is more expensive. That's a fact, eh? That's a fact. And sometimes we don't spend time to appreciate ourselves. We don't spend time looking in the mirror and appreciating how far we have come and evolved as a people. And I need say, I have worked with many different groups in my brief life thus far. But the farmers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are some of the most resilient people I have ever come across in my entire life. And we have to continually thank them. A hurricane will come today, and they will pick up tomorrow, and they will continue. The exercise that we are here engaged in is not only one which resides purely in agriculture, but one that touches and concerns deeply the science of culinary arts and the science of baking. Because you must get your ratios correct. Someone is not going to force themselves to eat bread made from potato flour just because it's an idea by the FAO or Mr. Dalton, or as good a speaker as Rex Collymore is. Words do not convince you all the time. It must taste good. And that is why I'm very, very happy that whilst the Ministry of Agriculture, whilst we are promoting doing more with locally grown material, we understand and appreciate at the organizational level that we have to employ the human resources within the culinary arts division in order for us to make a product that we can sell and that we can enjoy. This is definitely a game changer. And I want to encourage all stakeholders that one cannot do without the other. We are seeking here to reduce our food import bill. We are seeking to ensure that we have food security and food sovereignty. And I want to encourage persons in the private sector for this operation to be successful. There must be persons who are going to become engaged in the manufacturing of composite flour.
Reporting for the Agency for Public Information, I'm Sharish John.
A very commendable initiative indeed. Well, we're out of time. That's how we end this evening's presentation from the Agency for Public Information. Thank you very much for viewing, and I trust that you found it to be quite informative and interesting. Join us again on Thursday Divi at 8 p.m. for another presentation from the API. Until next time, I am Shanna Daniel. Good night and God bless.